So anyway, look.
Well, what you were saying is, Lydia and I were talking about this too, which is one of the weirdest things that happened was I could have made money and needed money. And I didn't want to be a, center-right version of the pretentious liberal that I was. Because that's what got me in trouble. It was being a self-righteous, loud liberal. Then I have an affair and they go, ha, 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 you're not perfect. That was the story. Yeah. Any comic on stage who did what I did, who talked about it, especially talked about it with like regret. Like, yeah, I wish I didn't do it. It was awful. No one's getting in trouble for that.
But so you this is what you got canceled over on the left.
Yeah. And so, but in the feminist world, a consensual affair got called sexual misconduct. Consensual one-night stands got called predatory behavior. And I was like, it's insane.
Remember Aziz Ansari?
Yeah.
He had a bad date, and she was like, it was assault. And he was like, whoa, what?
Yeah. The Woodward and Bernstein reporting of Babe.net. Is that the article you were talking about? It was literally called Babe.net. Yeah. There was like no fact checking. I mean, there was a line in the Jezebel article written about me where it said a girl that I slept with, a woman that I slept with, literally in the article said something along the lines of, it was the safest I felt with a man. Something saying that when I'm with women, I treat them well. Mm-hmm. And then said, but a week later, he called me a road F on his podcast. And then Jezebel in parentheses said Jezebel could not find that quote. And it's like, right, because I'm not talking about smashing road poon on my feminist podcast with my wife, you psychopaths. Yes, but they still printed that. Yep. And that was enough. And that headline will still come up when people are looking for me. I mean, I've had to have something people don't think about with cancellations. Like, I've lost tons of gigs. Still, this is 8 years ago. I am a literally different man. Every relationship I've had, try explaining to elderly conservative parents of your girlfriend what the Me Too movement is or what an open relationship. Like, there's just weird stuff that will haunt you always.
But I do feel like if you're meeting your girlfriend's conservative parents for the first time, and you want to explain to them cancellation, you can be like, a bunch of libs were lying about me, trying to cancel me, and they'll be like, we got you.
These feminists,
I mean,
yeah. You know what? That is probably the move I should do.
Do conservatives not ask enough questions?
What do you mean?
I'm giving you a hard time because you're like, I got canceled by a bunch of liberals. And they're like, oh, nice. Not like, for what? What happened?
Yeah, no. They're going to say, I get it.
Yeah.
They're going to say, oh, I know exactly what that is.
Be like, let me bang your daughter and we'll drink these liberal tears together.
Yeah, because if you're like, if you Google search me, there's some bad things that come up. They're going to go. But if you say, a bunch of feminists got mad and started lying about me.
They'll be like, we hear you, brother.
Yeah. They're going to be like, you poor man. And then the father's going to be like, I approve of this relationship. Yeah.
You know what? That's my go-to excuse for anything I do wrong ever again. I'd be like, dude, a bunch of feminists lied about me. I don't know what that is. Like, I'm sorry.
But we have a recording of you say it. Nah, it was from feminist recording is what that was.
Even with my family, my mom's like, your brother said that you did this. There's a bunch of feminists lying about me. Don't even worry about it. Don't even worry about
like,
it.
You're at a Trump rally and you fart and some woman calls you out.
I'm like, it's a bunch of feminists.
She's a feminist and they're like, oh, she's lying.
Yeah, you didn't see Antifa run by, fart, and then jump into the bushes?
It was literally an Antifa super soldier fart right behind me.
So before the show, you were asking me like, if I had a moment where I moved or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I was saying like I'm in essentially the exact same place I've always been, except for like gun control.
Right.
Because I was moderate on gun control. Now I'm basically a two-way absolutist, and I've even argued the Constitution guarantees the right of an individual to have nuclear weapons. You want to change it? I'm not saying that it should be that way. I'm saying people had cannons and frigates and privateers and all that stuff. So for me, I didn't change. But the issue is conservatives didn't change either. Everybody changed a little bit. Everybody moved a little bit to the left. Actually, you can look at data from the New York Times.
Yeah, conservatives seem way cooler with like gay people.
Right, like Trump unfurled an LGBT flag on stage at like the RNC or something.
Did he do it gaily though?
I don't know.
That would have been the flex.
But he made a point about how the guy who shot up the nightclub. He was like, he's killing our people, and they clapped for it. They were like, yes, like that's wrong. And so there were a lot of changes that happened. Trump being okay with gay marriage was how a lot of people were like, okay, like this is. I
mean, Obama and Clinton weren't okay with it.
Right.
It got passed because Biden like slipped up on The View, right, or something like that.
So I'm watching this video from Rap News number 6, and pro free speech, pro Julian Assange, and I'm like, all of these positions right now, if you watch that, you'd be a Trump supporter. And this was back during Occupy Wall, it was like pre-Occupy Wall Street, When they actually, the Rep News guys filmed at Occupy Wall Street, and I'm in the video as part of a group with Anonymous, and we're like yelling stuff. Because when I found out that they were making the video, I saw it on their Facebook.
You started
and I was
spitting
like,
bars.
I know. I was like, let me in. Like, dude, I love this stuff. I want to be in. So I'm just like an extra in it.
Yeah.
As we're all like chanting or whatever. But if you follow them, if you believed in what they believed back then, you would be a Trump supporter today.
Right.
Well, I can't remember who made this point, but it was one of our guests, and they said, "Do you think anyone who was in a coma for 10 years and then woke up today would go, oh my gosh, things have gotten so far to the right? Like, do you think they'd read the newspaper and see current events and go, oh my goodness, this country's so conservative now?
I have, I'll try and keep as much information, private as possible, but there are certain individuals of moderate prominence who were, let's just say, indisposed for a few years during the Trump administration. And when they came out, they were politically homeless and confused because the left was not the left anymore. So I used to hang out with a ton of people in the hacker community back pre-Occupy Wall Street.
Can they help my Google search if they're listening to this?
I mean, yes, they can.
You guys shoot me a DM, please.
But these are like reputation management firms these days handle all this stuff. So my hacker friends were pro free speech, pro edgy comedy. They were very, very into super offensive internet posts, trolling. Goatsy stuff, shock content, lemon party, all those really awful things. Don't let your kids go look up.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Something happened.
Tell the kids
shift
about
happened.
it and then tell them don't look.
So there are certain people who
They'll pay the price for that lemon
there are
party.
certain,
Oh, I don't even know what that
certain
is.
hackers
but
who
don't
end up
look.
going to prison
Yeah.
with a limited access to news and the internet culture.
Yeah.
They come out, and then all of a sudden they're like, all right, where's the left? And they're like, we don't like free speech anymore. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
And they're like, all the things you used to say and do that we were friends with you for, if you do now, we will punish you.
I mean, Louis J. Gomez, the Legion of Skanks guys, were called Proud Boys. Louis J. Gomez, who is Puerto Rican. They're some of the funniest comedians in the world. And I did shows with them a couple weeks ago. And their audience is, if you just follow Twitter, you would assume it's an audience of Nazis. And their audience is diverse. They are sweet. They just like good comedy. But now, your friends get out of jail, and Ben Shapiro is the only one defending Dave Chappelle, where the right has suddenly taken on Dave Chappelle. And the left it's just, again, isolating and alienating comedy fans. Now, I will say, on the other side, and I think this doesn't have to do with left or right, it's just tribalism in general. I remember something that really disappointed me was I went on a bunch of right-wing shows and I stayed liberal. I went on Glenn Beck's. It was great. We disagreed with some stuff, but I got to talk about Palestine on Glenn Beck's show. That's dope. And we mainly talked about tribalism. And I did a bunch of other right-wing shows. And again, you're a grifter if I go on a right-wing show and I start saying things I don't believe in for money, right? If I go on Glenn Beck's and I'm like, we can build a wall, and it's just stuff I don't believe in. But I was still myself. So I get like hundreds of new followers and a bunch of people saying the equivalent of, I don't agree with you, but I like that you're trying to bring people together, blah, blah, blah. Then George Floyd gets killed, and I start posting a bunch of don't kill black people. Nothing crazy. Not old preachy Jamie. Just don't kill black people. And which, again, even Trump and Pence ended up saying that was bad, right? And I remember people, even on my Instagram, which is usually less of a cesspool than Twitter, were like, looks like feminist cuck Jamie's back. Here we go with lib stuff. And the fact that I got canceled by some fake feminists implies that I have to be pro George Floyd being killed. Like, that's why I think tribalism is the problem.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And right now the left is doing it worse than the right, but it still happens on both sides. Where don't pretend you are above my politics and think I'm a good guy, and just while I can be used as a prop.
Of course.
Where you can just point to me and be like, oh, look at that guy. He's anti-woke. He got screwed over by whatever. I'm like, I don't want to be anyone's prop. I can still have these thoughts that sometimes conservatives will disagree with, sometimes liberals will disagree with.
That's why I think it's the rule for the left, the exception for the right, in terms of that animosity. The left is very tribal. If you deviate on one thing, boom, you're right wing.
That's crazy.
The right, you'll certainly have people, people post at me and stuff and all the time as well. But for the most part, they're not going to, they might yell at you, but that's about it. They're not going to call your boss.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of it's just Twitter in general? Because when I meet liberal people at the gym or on a date or conservative people, I think actually more people than we think feel the exact same way we're talking. You just get the lunatics on both sides on Twitter.
No, they're just trying to get info out of you because they work for Veritas.
Damn it!
Yeah,
I knew
sorry,
it.
dude.
But we met organically.
No. The right-wing lunatics aren't on Twitter. They're all banned.
That's actually a good point.
You're seeing the sanitized conservative movement on Twitter, and you're seeing the fringe of the left on Twitter. So this was bad for Democrats. And I warned about this like 3-4 years ago. I put it this way. You see two little boys with an adult woman, and she's got two little boys with her. One's just drenched in dirt and chocolate and ice cream, and he's all messy looking. The other kid is perfect and clean with a smile on his face. Yeah. And from the outset, you say, okay, that kid is a disaster. He's messy, and that other kid is clean and responsible. But the reality is, the mother just doesn't let the clean kid have ice cream. So the kid who's allowed to have ice cream makes a mess, and the kid who's not allowed to have it doesn't have the opportunity to make a mess. Right. When Twitter started suspending bad voices or voices they thought were bad on the right, they were making it so that the most prominent conservative people on Twitter were Ben Shapiro, a practical, logical, moderate conservative guy, or I should say traditional conservative. And then the left is Antifa saying burn it down and threatening death. So a regular person goes on and says, oh, that's a little too much. Yeah. This allows, Twitter allowing the left to say and do crazy things radicalizes people. It charges up the engine. But people on the right are like, I don't want to get banned, so I'm not going to say that. Right. It's actually making people on the right try and dress up and get clean, and the left is running amok, smashing windows and looking stupid.
Which is so funny, because whenever my argument for when people would equate the extremes on both sides is I was like, oh, what, the left wants you to have like too much health care or wants to end all the war. But yeah, when you start advocating violence, it's like, well, no, that's who we're talking about.
Exactly. And so this is an argument that people on the far left are still making. So I saw this the other day when the far left was referred to. There were all sorts of lefties going, oh, what does far left mean? They really want universal health care? And I was like, dude, the positions you're describing all apply to Tim Pool, but he's called far right. It's like, well, obviously when we're talking about the far left, we're talking a lot about the social issues.
Yeah, I mean, policy-wise, I think I would not compare universal health care to bombing Iraq and Afghanistan. But then again, you have Democrats who are also droning weddings.
Every Democrat voted to fund one of the largest war packages in history with Ukraine.
The rest,
wild. Yeah. It's like, 6 times what anyone else in Europe has paid? Yeah. We put in $54 billion. Every Democrat, even the squad. Yeah. So, man, that is, it's funny when we have a debate or argument with, Matt on abortion, and I'm like, this has never been a really big issue for me because, for one, I'm not a woman. I'm not a legal, moral, or theological scholar. I mean, I had a conversation with Glenn Beck, and ultimately I ended with like, man, I really just don't know. I just feel like there's a barrier for me, and I can't really, I don't have the answers.
Such a good, like that should be the answer if that.
Yeah. But war. Yeah. This one's always been very clear cut for me, and I know a decent amount about what we do, why we do it, why we want to enforce the petrodollar. I bring up all the time the Qatar-Turkey pipeline, Gazprom, all this stuff. And I'm like, it is bad that we are doing these things. If you can go from being, you're like, I'm on the left. And I'm like, okay, and you're the anti-war party. And then you vote for Joe Biden. Right. I'm going to look at you and say, huh?
Yep.
And then when Joe Biden's like, come on, man, give me the biggest war package in history. You're like, okay. I'm like,
he's folksy.
Yeah, progressives are pro-war.
Yeah.
Progressives are pro-war, liberals are pro-war, Democrats are pro-war, and half the Republicans are pro-war.
I mean, I discovered this. I got in a lot of trouble the one time and only time I went on the Conan O'Brien show because I talked all about drone strikes. But I did not talk all about drone strikes under Bush. Bush is when I started talking about war, but Obama was still using drones. So it was under Obama. And it was me and Kobe Bryant were the only other guests. So not exactly like my audience tuning in. And if you watch the clip's probably still on YouTube. It goes well with the audience. But I was told it was the most complaints they've gotten. And that's why my belief has always been just principles over party. That's it. It's if you're anti-war, be anti-war under Bush. Be anti-war under Obama.
Yes.
Be anti-war under Trump. Be anti-war under Biden. It's that simple. But the fact that there's such cognitive dissonance, and not only will suddenly they be pro-war, but then they're just getting defensive. and they're acting like you're a monster for criticizing Biden, or that Susan Sarandon's the reason Roe v. Wade's being overturned. It's absolute insanity.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.